American Dream, I think it was called. It was back in Philadelphia, set in the same time zone, time, place. And one of my friends who read the book said, Jack, they stole your script. It was exactly like that, but it was in Philadelphia. And so it must have a common theme among baby boomer types, okay? But the point is, it's really something that, to me, that the whole thing was trying to express the friendships that were evolved in this town, in this school in many cases, and all the wonderful things that came from it. And I'm so glad we have a museum to honor the past of our town. And I think it's something that if the book is on Amazon, I'm not here to really sell it, but I wrote it 22 years ago, so I'm clearly not too eager to push this thing. But if you want to see it, it's a good read. It's $10 or so, and maybe you'll get something from it that'll take you back to the days when we were younger and doing that. Okay. There's other things I could get into and read, but I find that kind of boring. I think reading the book is fine. I don't need to read it to you, but I think that the spirit I'd like to convey to you is I wish I knew as much then as I do now about how important those days were. I kind of knew they were important, but I didn't know how much. And it's something that I think we really should go back and cherish and remember all those guys on that wall. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
First of all, where did you live in Levittown? And second of all, what made you write the book?
I lived on Green Lane, literally right behind the school, right at the top of the hill. And we moved out here from Harlem, and 110th Street is where I grew up as a little kid. At the end of the second grade, some poor guy got killed in the building next to us, and my father said, "That's it, we're moving." And I said, "When?" He goes, "Like, pack your bags, now." And that was the luckiest day of my life that he took us out here. I'm laughing one day. I mean, the people next door said, "Could you keep it down?" And he said to me before he left, he goes, "You remember all this stuff?" He goes, "You got to write it down." He goes, "Nobody remembers all this stuff." I said, yeah. And then I went home that night and I said, he's got a point there. So I started fooling around with it, and it became almost an obsession. Actually, it became therapy, is what it became. And I tried to tell the story as innocently as I could. I didn't want my kids to think I was a total lunatic. But I didn't want them to gloss over it. One of the inspirations for that, before I talked with my friend Billy, when my oldest daughter, who's now 45, was in the 6th grade, she had a history assignment. And I said, "Let me see that history book." One paragraph about Vietnam. I was enraged. Excuse me. And it was really something that I couldn't believe that it could be ignored in such a way. And that's what inspired me. Don't write a book. It takes a lot out of you. It took a year to do it. I walked around with a microphone, a tape recorder, a notepad. Every song I heard took me back to something. And it was, and honestly, I was on the periphery of it. I wasn't in battle. I wasn't going through the things that my friends were going through. Is there some survivor guilt in that? Yeah, sure there is. I'm still glad I didn't go, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it was tough to see your friends go through that. So, not everybody went to Germany, right, Jim? You were over there too, though, right?
No.
Oh, no, you weren't.
I was in Korea during Vietnam.
Oh, okay, that's right. No, Korea was no bargain either. But anyway, that's what this book is about, and it's fitting that Paul asked me to talk a little bit about it. Again, I'm no expert. I'm not even a veteran, but I was there in this town when all that happened.
I was in Korea for 2 years
Yeah.
before Vietnam really got heated up. When I got out, you have a total of 6 years at that time,
Active.
military obligation. So the 2 years after I got out, I was subject to recall in the reserves. But a couple of times I had a snootful, and I thought of all these guys in Vietnam that were getting shot at, and I said, here am I, all comfortable in New York, and I almost went down to the draft board and to the enlistment office and signed up again. They would have taken me back. They would have taken anybody
Sure, at some
at
point
that
they
time.
would.
It was sheer guilt, but And I always sobered up the next day, and I said, no, I'm glad I didn't go down
You didn't
there.
have too much. You did your service though, so God bless you. You know. Korea must probably no picnic. You know.
No, no, not at all. None of them all.
Well, I read the book, thought it was great, would recommend everybody reads it. And I read it quite a while ago as
20 years ago.
well, but I still remember how cleverly you, and not so obviously in some cases, disguised the areas of Levittown. And my favorite was the Torch Bar.
Oh, the Inferno.
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 That was the flame.
We used to go to the Flame all the time, and if anybody attended our senior year concert, you would have seen that we went to the Flame, because we were all drunk. The whole choir was drunk. But in fact, at our prom, the assistant principal came up to me and said, "Good thing you're graduating, kid." He said, "Because you were totally ossified at that concert. Because I could have got you then." I said, "Yeah, no, that was all right." But no, I had to change the names, as you can imagine.
But it's clever the way you did it.
Yeah, well, it was either that or get sued, I suppose, so I had to be clever. But we tried to make it as similar as possible. And all of the stuff in this book, it's not true, I mean, it is made up, but you would just say, "I'll meet you at the Green, and we'll do something later." So it was just so idyllic to live in this town at that time. And but thank you for the kind words, Eddie, I appreciate it. Eddie's a writer himself, he's done a few pieces, so keep an eye for Ed Daniels there. But, excuse me, the writing of a book, honestly for me, was kind of therapeutic. I always cared about the people I grew up with, I loved them in many ways, but I never really got to tell the whole story out loud. And for me, the book was kind of like a psychotherapy, you know, or maybe just the psycho part, I don't know. But the fact is, my kids did get a better understanding, sometimes a little too much. But Billy Stone would come over the office and go to the house, and he would tell them all the crazy stuff we did. And, holy shit, stop. You know. But, you know, they learned to love me anyway, supposedly. But it was fun. It was fun growing up that way. And there's a line from a movie that really sums up how I feel about all my friends in Levittown, especially the closer ones. I think it was called Charlestown. It was Ben Affleck. There was a town in Boston. I was told that they were all bank robbers. They were known-
Oh, that town.
The town? The town? Okay.
Bad language.
Ben Affleck walks into Jeremy Renner's place. He says, "I'm in a lot of trouble. I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. And after it's over, some people may get hurt, but you can never ask me about it." And Jeremy Renner turns to him and says, "Whose car are we taking?" You know, that's what it was. There was just an ultimate trust between each other and a bond between each other. And it was beautiful. So that's really all I can say. I don't want to read the book to you, but you know, if you get a chance, it's on Amazon. If you don't, find somebody who has it and borrow it. But I think you get a kick out of the story, you know, bring back some memories. Yes, Paul?
There's a particularly disquieting and paradoxic character in the book. Conservative tone to it. And so the perception of the Vietnam War, even whether we're in favor of U.S. intervention or not, kind of fit some way into that.
It's real, but it wasn't all one person. It was a segment of one person who became more radical, another person who was an actual, close to being a terrorist.
Because I have to confess that after I read that book, I started trying to Google to find out who that person was.
You'll never know.
The
You'll
name-
never, you'll never get it from me. Not
But it got
alone.
me very curious. So I did a little research on, Students for Democratic Society bombing, World War, looking to find a pattern that matched.
No, that particular scenario in the book, there was a bombing across from the Statler Hilton. And Vince and Mary were getting engaged. She runs over to buy him, the love story between them is kind of unique, but she goes over to buy him an ice cream from the vendor, because he used to buy her one when they were kids. Excuse me. And she gets into this bombing. And it turned out later it was a student from a Democratic Society, like a weatherman, basically, who did it. That was borrowed from the headlines, the bombing was, but I did know somebody who was a radical like that. And I just kind of married the two together, and that allowed for the convergence of her new life as a real leftist.
Yeah, but it says something about your quality of your book and you as a writer, the fact that it was so believable
Oh,
that I wanted to figure out who this person was.
Well, if you meet her, stay away. It's very dangerous.
Or get her as a guest speaker here. Why not?
You have to bring the police with you.
Did you write anything about the way guys who came back into the neighborhood got discovered? The
Not
way
too
they-
much because-
The way they, you know, that was emotional to a lot of
Well,
guys.
that
And plus
would be a
everybody
good story
spitting on
today. I wouldn't have known enough at that time to see the result of it. Not too many guys were back yet. There were still a lot of guys over there. So we knew that there was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of injuries, there was certainly death. But I think some of the guys kidding around, but not really kidding totally. We're talking about going, let's go down to Jones Beach and play Vietnam in the reeds.
Well, we did that with cowboys and Indians.
Right, but we just changed the setting to Vietnam. We didn't know what the hell Vietnam was. We couldn't even spell it. I mean, we really didn't know what was going on, what was
I
ahead of
was
us.
in the Marine Corps, we didn't know what Vietnam was. We were going there.
Well, God bless you, you did it, but I'm glad you're back. But the fact is, back then, we didn't really know what was ahead of us. There was a sense of foreboding that your life really couldn't get on hold yet, until this other stuff was over. But we didn't really, we couldn't have appreciated what it was. And I was lucky enough not to have to go through that, but, my friends did, and it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch. Yes, sir.
I look forward to ordering your book from Amazon. Haven't read it yet, obviously, but excuse me. The character Mary. I'm just wondering, back in this time period, were there protests locally? Sit-ins, things that happened at the Kent State.
At the end of high school, we graduated in '66, my class. At the end of high school, there began to be some of that. On college campuses there were, but we were still pretty insulated from that. But from that year on, it kind of blossomed. It really took off a lot.
Right. Anything in Levittown? That we
Well,
know?
I don't remember the exact time. Remember the one on the 4th of July,
Ron
Kovic?
Kovic, right in this building.
He was in this building, yeah. But I think it was a year or two later. Yeah, he
Around
was.
72, wasn't it?
It was at least 70. Yeah, it was at least 70.
Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't even know it until I did the research on the book. And, when I wrote this book, I didn't even know about the internet. It was 22 years ago. I did everything through my parents, it's a funny story. My parents bought Encyclopedia Britannica from some poor struggling kid who was putting his way through college. Certain information. Research was hard, even though I was there and lived through it. There's one part in the book where we talk about seeing Dr. Zhivago. I wrote this piece which I thought was well written, and then I said to myself, when did Zhivago come out? And I had to look up, I just made it within that window of time. So it was a good experience. I enjoyed doing it. And when it was over, I was glad it was over too. But if you do read it, I hope you enjoy it. And I'm here for a while if you want to talk and do something or dance or something. But please go up here before you leave and look at that wall. Bob McDevitt, by the way, who was a '63 graduate. You might know him. He was
I
St.
grew up
Peter's.
in Howard Beach.
Okay, you wouldn't know him. Well, Bob went to division and came to Memorial as well. He was in Laos, he was in Cambodia, he was all over the place. He's a real, honoree of the servicemen. He went down to the wall and did etchings of all the 37 guys that were killed. He made those plaques. And I guess it was 3 years ago we did the presentation at the library, Paul?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Charlie Vogt was involved with some of the research. Bob McDevitt did most of the work, and they asked the non-veteran to give a presentation because I was the only guy that lived here. But they did a nice job. In fact, Dennis Dunn came down and he did some talks too on it, and it was really a nice tribute to the guys. And this thing belongs in the museum here because we gave up a lot of our good friends and brothers for it. But I'm here if you want to talk. If not, thank you so much for coming.
Great.
Good presentation.
Thanks.